Hello and welcome to Getting Your Money's Worth, the show that focuses on value. I'm Judith West, and our guest today is Catherine Kaputa.
Yes.
Author of The Female Brand, Using the Female Mindset to Succeed in Business. Okay. There are some folks that said if we had used the female mindset in finances, we wouldn't be in this debacle.
Right. No, it's true. I mean, they used to talk about women being risk adverse. I mean, you don't hear people talking about that now because it's a good thing.
Yeah, or watching every detail. You don't hear about that.
Right.
Anyway, thanks for being on the show. So, you make a general statement that caught my eye right off as I was reading through the book. You say men don't leave their gender at the door.
Right.
They make the most of doing business on the golf course or at the sports bar or talking about the Yankees.
Right.
Why is it that women feel a need to leave their gender at the door?
Well, I think for so many years, we were kind of told to, act like a man, to show up like a man. In fact, way back in the 80s, we dressed like men.
Wore ties, right.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think women were trying to be men, and I think that, that was, that whole women's lib thing. There's no differences between men and women, and I think women tried to be men. And frankly, it's never smart to be something you're not, because you're not being authentic. And that's why it didn't work. And I think also when women try to be men, it works against you because,
right.
Women have a tough line, because if you're too nice, you're viewed as weak. If you're too tough,
I don't know if you remember, but a few years, well, it probably goes back more than a few, maybe a decade or so, there was a list in Catalyst magazine. Is Catalyst magazine still around?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
That was one of the original feminist organizations.
Exactly.
And there was a whole list of adjectives and adverbs for female and men. And it was just that. A man can stick to his principles, and for a woman that's bossy.
Right, exactly.
Or a man can be firm when he speaks, and for a woman that's called aggressive.
Right. I mean, in the book, I call it female behavior confusion disorder.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, is that something you coined?
I coined it, because I'm into branding. Female behavior confusion disorder.
Okay.
It's like this fine line. If you're too this, you're that. If you're too, it's hard to get it just right. It's like Goldilocks.
Right.
It's getting just the right temperature. Whereas men can do things, and that's being strong. That's being assertive.
Or assertive, or principled,
right.
Or stand up for himself. All the things that. So you talk about it. What is the female brand?
Well, I think what is the female brand? The female brand, in distinction from the male brand, is a brand that's much more inclusive. It's much more big picture oriented. In fact, I would brand the 21st century as the era of the female leadership style, because I think the female leadership style, this kind of collaborative, rather than it being having power over people, you try to empower people. It's becoming much more popular.
Is it something like what got our president elected, the community organizer
Well, yeah.
concept?
In fact, I mean, a lot of people have said about Barack Obama, he's got a female leadership style. When you look at the studies about the male leadership style and the female leadership style, he had much more of a female leadership, this kind of grassroots, getting a wide group of people participating.
But Catherine, I could just envision, though, one of these, stiff boardrooms of Fortune 500 companies, and you start to talk about inclusive, empathic, and I could just envision, the male board members' eyes rolling. I don't know if big companies have bought into that yet.
Well, I think that they're doing it much more because global companies there's so many things that go on virtually. So the female leadership skills, which are very team-oriented, getting all different members of the group, women in studies, leadership studies are shown to be much more inclusive of not only level, but different ethnic backgrounds, gender, all of that. They really relish getting everyone's opinion. So I think in the whole global world, where you're putting ad hoc teams together, I think that style is important. But women have something to learn from the male style, too. So I'm not just saying
that's my next question. So tell me something. That's not to say that there's not some stuff for women to learn.
Right.
Because very often they do get in their own way.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you learn to walk that tightrope?
Well, I think one of the things is women should use a little more humor. and use a little more charm in the workplace, use some of their feminine side. I mean, studies show women are more likable. You know, men and women like women because we're empathetic, you know, we bond with people. And one of the things I talk about in the book are female aptitudes. You know, men don't leave their advantages, they don't leave their assertiveness behind. We need to use all our strengths, but also look at some strengths from the male world, like the whole issue of assertiveness. Yeah. Women don't ask. I mean, the show's about getting your money's worth. Yeah. Women historically don't ask for more money. Right. I mean, it's a big problem.
I know. I used to work for a gentleman who's an icon in retail. And oh my gosh, it was retail store. We had all retail store managers. Oh my gosh, he would go in and, you know, pat somebody on the back or give them a nice thing. I'd say, oh, thank you. You stayed in the store all night to get it open and change over season. And they would just beam. And they'd have to argue like anything the next day with this guy to give him a $5 a week raise.
Right, right.
They would never think at that time they're getting all that thanks. Women seem to be okay just accepting a compliment.
Right. No, it's a problem because if you don't ask, you don't get. In fact, one study showed that men are 8 times more likely to ask for more money in a negotiation than women do.
So tell me something, Catherine. We have more women than ever in the workplace today. Right. Are there better role models for women now than there used to be? Can women learn this in the cradle? Can they learn it around the kitchen table? How do you learn to do this?
Well, I think one of the problems is the lack of role models, because that's one of the issues that women face. But I think you've got to look in any kind of arena, whether it's politics or whether it's the business world. I mean, when I wrote the book, I asked women, I interviewed over 150 women, and I asked them, when you think of female business role models, who comes to mind? And these were senior women, and everybody was like, you know,
they couldn't think of
them. They couldn't think of people.
Look what we're going through with politics now. I mean, you know, listen, I don't think anybody can question Hillary Clinton's intelligence or smartness or her strength of character, her ability to withstand trauma.
Right.
She teared up a little bit, and oh my God, it was all over the news.
Right. Well, because I think that, you know, historically she was always tough. In fact, you know, when I talked to people in the book, I saw like an age divide in terms of Hillary. It was during the time I was interviewing, was during the election. And baby boomer women really liked Hillary. But younger women said to me, you know, she's kind of like a man. Listen to her talk. They felt that she did not use her feminine side as well as she might, and that was off-putting to them.
And then we have the contrast with Sarah Palin, who is too feminine.
Right, right.
So it is a tough line.
It's a tough line to draw, but I would argue, too, Sarah Palin's a branding genius. I mean, I think she certainly catapulted herself into the national consciousness very quickly. She made a fabulous first impression. Right.
And we're not discounting her yet.
No, exactly. Right. She's still heavily in the news.
Still heavily in the news. So, okay, you talk about this confusion disorder. I don't know if that's among men or among women. I think women are somewhat confused about how to behave. After all, it's maybe 21st century, but still many of the women who work for a living, power women or not, are still mothers.
Right.
Many of them, power women, are not still have. I remember reading that on Sarah Day O'Connor's day off, she scrubbed the bathroom floor. Right. Maybe she liked it. Maybe that was her therapy. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. They're still homemakers. Right. They still have the major domestic issues to deal with. It is a tough road, Catherine.
It is, and I think women define success differently than men do. I mean, that's one of the things I talk about in the book. Men are more likely to, getting a job, a certain job title, getting a certain money.
Salary.
Women, it's much more of a holistic kind of thing. They want to be successful at work, but not necessarily the top job. I mean, in fact, a number of women said to me, you know, I've erected my own glass ceiling. You know, I don't want to go higher than this level because I want to be involved with my children. I want to be involved with my community. Like you, pro bono activities that are important to you. And so, many women said, if I'm CEO or president. But I have to say,
they don't take more importance than money. First I made my money. First I made my money, and now I'm doing pro bono.
Right. I think women underestimate the importance of money, and I think women really put their mind to it in terms of getting what they should be paid. They have all the skills to do it. They have certainly the performance. You know, they're getting the job done. What they need to do is use their communication skills to build a case. The fact is, women don't feel comfortable promoting themselves.
Yeah, men do. Men are accustomed to.
Yes.
Women think they're bragging.
Right. Women think they're bragging, and they think bragging is bad. And I mean, one social scientist studied this, and he called it the male hubris effect.
Right.
Not only do they feel comfortable promoting themselves, they tend to exaggerate what they've accomplished.
And I think that there are some tips. I think that there are some techniques, Catherine, that you can learn. I dealt with a very old, cranky boss that I already said. His company was full of women, but he didn't like to give increases to women. And he complimented me often. But I got someone gave me a hint. Every time he complimented me, in those days he was older, we didn't use a lot of email. Every time I sent him an internal memo, I said, thank you so much for noticing that we made this change in the blouse strategy for the season. Right. Thank you so much for noticing that the number one item was this blouse from Miss Bender. And I put in the bottom, CC file.
Right.
And you know something, I began to build a dossier about what I did for a living. And when I went in for my review, I walked in carrying this file.
Right.
And that kind of spoke for me. So I think there are tips that can be learned.
Can I tell you, I talk about putting together brag book.
A man taught me that.
Exactly. I call it a brag book in the book, but it's an important thing because women don't think of it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the senior women I interviewed talked to me about she would often go into work early and ride up the elevator with the CEO, and she'd talk about the weather. And then she noticed the guys getting in the elevator were saying, oh, John, did you know about the project? You know, how well we did, and this sale really went through. And then she realized, hey, these guys are promoting themselves and giving an elevator speech, and I'm being the weather girl.
Exactly.
And she changed it, and she said it made a tremendous difference in her career.
Right, exactly.
And now she's head of a major division.
You know, and also even to the terms of, look, whether we like it or not, Catherine, society has a tendency to value your contribution by how much money you're paid to do it.
Right, right.
You know, and even when it comes to feeling good about earning money and speaking up to folks with your investing money, it's a whole ripple effect.
Right.
I used to do business with a broker, and his assistant, who was female, would call me up and say, Judith, could you please hold for Mr. Solomon? And after a while, I started him. I said, there's something wrong with this. I'm giving him my business. He's Mr. Solomon, and I'm Judith. So finally he said, how come every time you have the phone, you're not on it? I said, listen, I'm going to tell you something. A man taught me this. Kings talk to kings. When you want to talk to me, be on the phone.
Right. Good for you.
But this brag book is a very good idea. Watching what your contemporaries do.
And having it top of mind, so that if you are asked, you know, and you're in a situation where you're meeting somebody, you can talk about some of your projects in a conversational way. Or if you're pitching yourself, that you've thought it through. And I've done this, I've done that.
And just as a last thing, there's nothing wrong with smiling and acting a little flirtatious if you want to, and saying, oh, gee, and giving a toss or something. It's okay.
Right. No, I think it's important to, you know, that's part of our,
I think that's part
of our strengths. You know, is not only visual identity, but also, you know, using
a little bit of branding, using using every tool you have in your toolbox.
Absolutely. Right. Men do, we should too.
Exactly. Thanks for being on the show. I'm Judith West. You're watching Getting Your Money's Worth. Boy, do I like this book, Female Brand. I feel like I've been there and done it. Thanks for watching.